90 minutes before Gwendlyn's wedding ceremony, everything appeared to be exactly where it needed to be. The flowers were arranged. The guests were settling in. The music was playing softly, and the atmosphere should have been filled with excitement. Yet, one detail immediately stood out: an empty chair reserved for Kody Brown. What happened afterwards has fueled plenty of discussion among Sister Wives viewers. According to the timeline described in the source material, Kody did not simply arrive late. The bigger question is why he was absent for so long, and whether his eventual arrival changed the atmosphere of the celebration. Before we get into the details, make sure you subscribe if you enjoy Sister Wives updates, Brown family discussions, and the latest developments surrounding Kody, Christine, Janelle, Meri, and their children. And stay with me, because there is one tiny detail involving a takeaway drink that the original story uses to connect the entire timeline. Let's go back to the beginning. With the ceremony approaching, the venue was reportedly full of family members and guests who were there to celebrate Gwendlyn and her partner. Christine was surrounded by family. Janelle was present, and the siblings were enjoying the occasion. On the surface, it was supposed to be a joyful day. But Kody's absence created an uncomfortable question. Where was he? The source material describes the family becoming increasingly aware of the empty chair as the ceremony drew closer. At first, his absence could easily have been explained away as a delay. Traffic, last-minute problems, or simple bad timing could all have been possible explanations. But as the minutes continued to pass, concern reportedly turned into frustration. Around 40 minutes before the ceremony, the atmosphere was said to have become noticeably more tense. People were checking their phones and wondering whether Kody would actually arrive. And this is where the story introduces a very specific detail. A brightly colored matcha drink with a distinctive pink sticker reportedly appeared in the background of one of the clips connected to the wedding. At first glance, it sounds completely insignificant. Why would anyone care about a drink? Well, according to the source material, that drink becomes important later. The ceremony eventually began without Kody. Gwendlyn walked down the aisle. The vows took place. The celebration continued, and the family members who were there focused on the reason they had gathered in the first place: the bride and her new marriage. That is important because an absence can sometimes become bigger than the person who caused it. Once the ceremony starts, there is no going back. The father who was expected to be present has already missed the walk down the aisle. He has missed the vows. He has missed the emotional center of the ceremony. And that is exactly what makes the timing so significant. The wedding did not stop. The family did not collapse. The celebration continued. According to narrative in the source, the reception then became increasingly relaxed. Family members celebrated, danced, laughed, and tried to make the day about Gwendlyn rather than the person who was missing. That reportedly continued for nearly 2 hours. Then came the moment that changed the atmosphere. Kody arrived. The source describes a video allegedly showing him entering through the back doors of the venue approximately 2 hours after the ceremony was due to begin. The reaction described in that footage is particularly interesting. Rather than the entire room stopping to welcome him, the atmosphere reportedly became tense. Some guests appeared to notice his arrival immediately. Family members looked towards the entrance. The celebration continued, but the mood had changed. And suddenly, everyone had a new question. Why arrive now? There are several possible explanations. Perhaps there was a genuine delay. Perhaps something happened privately that guests were unaware of. Or perhaps the timing was simply unfortunate. The source material, however, presents a much stronger interpretation. That Kody's absence may have been deliberate. That remains a theory rather than an established fact. But it is a theory that has fueled much of the discussion. The argument goes like this. If Kody had arrived on time, he would simply have been one member of the family attending his daughter's wedding. The attention would naturally have been on Gwendlyn, her partner, and the celebration. But arriving dramatically late changes the dynamic. Suddenly, people are talking about him. Where has he been? Why did he miss the ceremony? What happened? Will he speak to Christine? How will the children react? Whether intentional or not, his late arrival would naturally draw attention. And that is exactly what appears to have happened according to the source. The reception reportedly continued, but Kody's presence became a new point of focus. The interactions were described as awkward rather than warmly emotional. Christine, meanwhile, was portrayed as remaining focused on the celebration rather than allowing the situation to take over her daughter's day. That contrast is particularly significant. Christine and Kody have experienced years of public conflict and major changes within their family structure. So seeing them at the same family event naturally creates interest. Yet according to the narrative presented here, Christine did not make Kody the center of attention. She carried on. And perhaps that is what made the situation even more interesting. Because the biggest question is not simply why Kody arrived 2 hours late. The bigger question is what happened before he arrived. This brings us back to that matcha drink. The source material points to a drink with a distinctive pink receipt sticker. It claims that the same drink appeared at 2 different points in the timeline, once before the ceremony and again after Kody eventually arrived. The story then makes a much bigger claim, that the drink may have been purchased near Kody and Robyn's home and somehow ended up at the wedding venue. From there, the narrative suggests that this could indicate Kody was closer to the venue than people realized. But this is where we need to separate speculation from fact. A drink in the background of a social media photograph cannot, by itself, prove where someone was or what they were doing. It may be an interesting clue. It may be completely unrelated, without verified footage, timestamps, receipts, or direct statements from the people involved. The stronger conclusions remain speculation. Still, the theory is intriguing because it changes the question. Instead of asking, why was Kody late? Viewers might ask, was Kody actually nearby before the ceremony? That is a very different question. And if he was nearby, the situation becomes even more complicated. The source material suggests that a family member may have encountered Kody near the venue, and that this could explain the appearance of the drink. Again, there is no confirmed evidence presented here that proves this happened exactly as described, but it is the detail that has given the story its biggest twist. Imagine the situation from Gwendlyn's perspective. This is one of the biggest days of her life. She has planned a celebration. Her family is there, and she naturally expects important people to share the moment with her. If a parent is absent, that absence can hurt. But the family appears to have carried on, and that may be the most powerful part of the entire story. Gwendlyn's wedding did not become defined by who was missing. It continued to be about the people who showed up. Christine was there. Janelle was there. The siblings were there. Friends and other guests were there. And the celebration moved forward. That is significant because the Brown family has changed dramatically over the years. The family structure that viewers once knew is no longer the same. Christine has moved on with her life. Janelle has established her own independence. Meri has taken a different path. And the adult children have increasingly developed lives outside their parents' control. Kody's role within that changing family dynamic has therefore become a major talking point. For years, his presence carried enormous weight. But what happens when a family learns to celebrate without someone who once seemed central to everything? That is the question this wedding story raises. The source material interprets Kody's late arrival as a possible attempt to reclaim attention. That is an interesting theory, but it should remain exactly that. A theory. Nobody outside the people directly involved can know his private motivation unless he explains it himself. Maybe he had a genuine reason. Maybe there was a personal issue. Maybe the timing was simply unfortunate. Or maybe there was something more complicated happening behind the scenes. What we can say is that his absence became noticeable, his arrival became another talking point, and the wedding continued regardless. And there is another detail worth considering. The source describes Kody entering the reception rather than quietly slipping into the background. If accurate, that would naturally create a moment of attention. But even then, we have to be careful about reading motives into body language. A person walking into a room, looking around, or speaking to guests does not automatically prove that they are trying to dominate the event. Reality television and social media clips can make ordinary moments appear much more dramatic than they actually were. That is why timelines like this need to be approached carefully. The matcha cup is interesting. The 2-hour gap is interesting. The late arrival is interesting. But none of these details independently prove a deliberate plan. What they do show is how quickly a small family moment can become a major discussion point when the Brown family is involved. And perhaps that is why this wedding has generated so much attention. People are not simply watching a wedding. They are watching a family that has undergone years of change, conflict, and separation. Every empty chair carries history. Every awkward interaction carries history. And every time Kody appears alongside his adult children, viewers naturally wonder how those relationships have changed. The most striking part of this story may therefore have nothing to do with the alleged plan behind the delay. It may simply be that the celebration continued. Gwendlyn's wedding was not canceled. The ceremony went ahead. The vows were exchanged. The reception continued. People danced. People laughed. And the family members who were there made sure the bride remained at the center of the day. Whatever happened with Kody, that part did not change. And if the 2-hour absence was intended to create tension, then the bigger question becomes whether it actually worked. Because once the family continued celebrating, the power of the absence began to disappear. By the time Kody eventually arrived, the wedding was already underway. The most important moments had already happened. The bride had already walked down the aisle. The vows had already been spoken. And the guests had already begun celebrating. That is why the story remains so fascinating. The late arrival may have created a dramatic moment, but could not take back the moments that had already passed. And perhaps that is the real message hidden inside this entire controversy. The Brown family is no longer the family it once was. The children are adults. The former sister wives have created separate lives. And the family gatherings that once revolve around Kody are increasingly able to continue without him. So, was Kody's 2-hour absence deliberate? Was there really something significant behind that mysterious match shot-up? Or has social media taken a few small details and connected them into a much bigger theory? At the moment, the source material does not provide enough independently verified evidence to answer those questions with certainty. But one thing is clear. The timing has given viewers plenty to discuss. And if more footage, statements, or reliable information emerges about what happened before and during the wedding, that could completely change the story once again. For now, Gwendlyn's wedding remains a celebration that continued despite the drama surrounding her father's absence. And perhaps that is the part worth remembering most. The day belonged to Gwendlyn, not to the family conflict, not to old disagreements, not to social media speculation, and not to whoever walked through the doors 2 hours later. It belonged to the bride. So what do you think? Was Kody simply delayed? Or do you think there was more going on behind the scenes? And what do you make of the mysterious match-a-cup detail? Let me know your thoughts in the comments, because this is one Brown family story that is definitely going to keep people talking. And if you enjoyed this update, please subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, and come back for more Sister Wives news, family updates, and the latest Brown family stories. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.